West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Exclusive interview with Senator Joe Manchin as he's proving to be one of the most powerful people in Washington right now. Our congressional correspondent, Lauren Fox, went to West Virginia to sit down with Manchin. Lauren, you covered an array of topics with this very, very critically important senator.
Well, that's right, Wolf. I mean, look, he is the 50th senator in the U.S. Senate Democratic Caucus, and he is key to passing any legislation that the president needs passed, whether that's guns, whether that's voting rights, whether it is that massive infrastructure bill that the president just rolled out last week. So we talked to him about a range of issues, trying to get answers on whether or not he was going to stand in the way of some of those key items.
January 6th changed me, and I was very clear with everybody. I never thought in my life, I never read in history books to where our form of government had been attacked at our seat of government, which is Washington, D.C., at our capital, by our own people. Now, the British did it, but not Americans. So something told me, wait a minute, pause, hit the pause button, something's wrong. You can't have this many people split to where they want to go to war with each other.
Did the Biden White House talk with you before rolling out their infrastructure plan? And do you have other concerns other than just the corporate tax rate?
They've been very, very kind in talking. We do talk. We have communication.
How often?
As often as I would like, or as often as they would like. I'm always, with the president.
The president directly?
Whenever he calls me, he calls, and we have a good conversation. We've had a good friendship and relationship for a long time. We understand each other. I'm so pleased to understand that we have a person sitting in the White House that understands legislating, understands how Congress works and should work, and understands that basically we've got to represent the people that we represent. And I'm representing West Virginia to the best of my ability, and I'm trying to speak for my state.
I know that the vice president had done some interviews in your state of West Virginia, trying to put some pressure on you for the COVID relief bill.
I'm not really sure of that. And here's, things were moving very fast. They're just coming into it. Kamala and I have been friends, okay? We sat together and had a great relationship as far as an intel, and we still do. The vice president and president is and always will be invited, no matter who they may be, to the state of West Virginia, and I'll be there to meet them. It just, things happened real quick, and I didn't know. We just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And it was nobody's fault.
Some of your colleagues joke that you're the president of the Senate now. I've heard them in the hallways remark that to you. Do you like this role? How does it feel?
Let me tell you about it, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I've watched people that had power and abused it. I've watched people that sought power and destroyed themselves. And I've watched people that had a moment of time to make a difference and change things and used it. I would like to be that third.
I know that Schumer has made the effort to say that once you guys get back, you're going to bring up a background checks bill. Have there been any changes to Murphy's background check bill? Do you think that you could back it?
Chris Murphy is great to work with. He's a good person and a good friend. And Chris Murphy is more than willing to sit down and work in a compromising fashion to make something pass. It is long time for us to finally have background checks, especially commercial transactions. We don't know. I've been taught a long time ago as a little kid back in Farmington, that you don't sell your guns to strangers. You don't loan your guns to strangers. You don't do anything. It was protecting. We protected that and learned the safety precautions we take. Now, all of a sudden, they throw all caution to the wind. Well, if you go to a gun show and there's a person selling guns at a gun show, does not have to have background checks because the law allows them to be there. That shouldn't happen. Internet sells. What the president did, I supported President Donald Trump when he did stop the bump stocks, okay? He did that with executive order. I supported that. I support what the president did today. From what I heard, okay, what he's doing on executive order. Now, there's an awful lot of things he talked about, but the executive order says ghost guns should not be allowed to be legally made or sold or used. It's illegal because they're making them all for printers and can't detect them.
But you still can't support the House-passed background check
Not the way
bill.
the House bill is, but there, that's negotiations.
Have there been any negotiations
We haven't
over
gotten
this
the bill
recess?
yet. We haven't gotten the bill yet. No, we haven't. And I'm happy to work with them. I'm sit down, and I think that we call it common gun sense. And if you come from a gun culture such as I do in West Virginia, I don't think there's a person, I don't know a person that have a gun, okay? It's different background. I'm anxious to work with them and try to do something in a most constructive way.
The president also nominated a new director for the ATF today, and David Shipman is someone who has worked with advocates to try to end gun violence around the country. Exactly.
I understand he's a very good person. I don't know
Would you
him.
back him?
Everything I know, he's well qualified, and I have no reason why I would not, but I don't know enough yet. He's just been nominated today. We'll look into that and go through the process. But I've always been very differential about the president putting his team together.
This has, of course, always been a nominee that has been controversial and has sometimes gotten stuck in the U.S. Senate, but it doesn't sound like you would try to block him at this point.
He's really qualified. He worked at the ATF for 20-some years, I understand, so he knows it inside and out.
Would you be willing to pass the For the People's Act by killing the filibuster? Would you be willing to carve out an exception on that bill? Never,
I've been very, very clear. I think if you read my op-ed, it was very clear. I think we can find a pathway forward. I really do. I'm going to be sitting down with both sides and understanding where everybody's coming from. We should have an open, fair, and secure election. If we have to put guardrails on, we can put guardrails on so people can't take advantage of people. And I believe there are Republicans that feel exactly like I feel.
Some progressives think that you're standing in the way of significant changes the president could make on voting rights because you don't want to get rid of the filibuster. Other changes that they could make on gun reforms
they can
because
make
you have
all
problems.
These changes if they try to work towards the middle. You can't work in the fringes. You just cannot work in the fringes. We want fair, open, secured elections. And Georgia has done some things which I thought were just atrocious. Okay? But I've also been a Secretary of State and I've been a governor. And I know the 10th Amendment. I know my rights as far as states' rights. And I don't think there should be a overreaching, if you will, federal elections.
What changes?
Well, I'll tell you the one they did, which is unbelievable to me. They took away the powers of the election Secretary of State's office and put it in the hands of the Congress. In their legislature. Now you have no one person that you can hold accountable for. You have a whole legislature of 100 people or more. That's crazy.
And of course, Wolf, he said that when he gets back to Washington, he's going to sit down and have a conversation with Senator Raphael Warnock. Of course, he's a senator from the state of Georgia who has been trying to argue to the leadership that what they need to do is make a special carve out for the filibuster so that they can pass that voting reform bill through the U.S. Senate. I think it's very significant that Manchin saying not only that he's going to have conversations with Republicans on infrastructure, but that he recognizes he needs to have some of those conversations with people within his own party, because a lot of people on the outside, a lot of progressives view him as someone who's standing in the way of what President Biden could do.
What do you make of those comments from Senator Manchin, Gloria?
Well, in a way, he's not changing his mind. He's been saying, I'm against changing the filibuster. I'm against it. I'm not going to kill it. That's it. And so what this means is that Joe Biden, first of all, has to get the rest of his Democrats in line if he wants to get anything done. And he's got to look for 10 Republicans on a lot of things. And so the larger things he might want to do, The DREAM Act, for example. Voting rights, of course, is another example you were just talking about. Minimum wage, a large infrastructure package. All of these things really hang in the balance. And the problem, Wolf, in the Congress right now is that the political rewards come from fighting and not from finding common ground. Because if you fight and you're a Republican, you're not going to get primaried on the right if you fight with Democrats. And right now, Republicans don't agree on much other than they ought to oppose everything Joe Biden proposes. So maybe Manchin can find what he's looking for, but it's going to be very, very difficult. And we can all hope he has a great conversation with Senator Warnock and see what they can do about voting rights. But it's a difficult situation for the new president.
So does this spell some really, really serious trouble for President Biden's agenda? Does he need maybe even to start to rethink his strategy?
Well, he may have to do things in a more piecemeal way. Instead of these larger packages, he may have to scale it back. What Manchin does for him, though, is the progressives in the party who say to the president, you know, you're not doing enough. He can say to them, look, I'll be lucky to get what I proposed through. And so he may need to scale things back. He's going to have to talk to some Republicans, like those 10 or so Republicans who visited him on the rescue plan, see where they can find common ground. And by the way, he doesn't have all his Democrats in line either. So it's not only Joe Manchin who doesn't agree with him on certain things. It's Kyrsten Sinema, for example, of Arizona. So there are lots of moderates he's got to deal with. So the president is getting it from all sides, and it may push him to scale back a bit and see what is doable at this point. And as he said at the beginning of all of this, he said on this new package, he said, look, I know I'm not going to get all that I want, but here it is. We're going to have to work on it. And I think that's what Manchin is trying to force.
Yeah. It is Friday, the 9th of April of 2021. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. The French 77s are virtually poured because it's pretty darn early here in the morning for an analog French 77, as they say. So the virtual ones are all ready for your virtual imbibing pleasure. But do take care, even in the virtual world. The French 77, though be the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails, it is still a potent spirit. Do take care. All right, well, so much news. Joe Manchin's up there. You know, it looks like America's going to turn into that shiny mansion on the hill. Okay, I got that out of the way. So let's move on. Yes, let's. Some other aspects of the news. Well, Joe did address it, and that is the gun legislation, the gun safety legislation that our Joe, okay, Joe Biden, is marshaling through. And I saw the impact of it yesterday even. I went to pick up some medicine for Ma. Here in town in Rogue River, we have a pharmacy and a general store, a mercantile store, that is, well, we call it the pharmacy, but it's known as Rogue River Guns and Drugs. Yeah, they have a whole gun department there, and it was fairly crowded, and I don't know why yesterday. So a lot of people were lined up at the regular register, and so you can pay for things back at the pharmacy, you know, when people are picking up their things there. And if you have other items, you can pay for those other items there. Or you can pay for it in the sporting goods store, you know, where they sell the guns. Now, to be fair, they have a really extensive and, I would say, respected line of fly fishing material. But they also have a lot of guns. And there are a few people there. Oh, I'm jumping ahead here. So it was so crowded at the regular register. There's two of them. that one of the assistant managers said, we'll ring you up over here in sporting goods. So I go, okay, I'll walk over there. I'm ambulatory, as I can see most of the other people around me aren't so ambulatory. So I headed over there, and I'm waiting to pay for my items, and I hear this little tete-a-tete going, well, when are you going to get some more in? And the guy helping the other customer, who asked, when are you going to get some more in, said, well, I don't know. We have an order in, but we just haven't heard yet when we'll get them delivered. And then I heard, I hate fucking Joe Biden. And the helper, the store helper, said, I'm not a big fan either. And what it was is that Joe talked about gun safety. And so there was a run on ammo on the store, and they were sold out before other people were able to get there and get their ammo. Blaming Joe. I can see where that's going. There was a city council meeting the other night, and there was a lineup of the ISIS maggot trucks with big flags that said, fuck Biden. Fuck Biden. Driving around churches. They probably park at churches and go to church. Fuck Biden. And they were at the city council meeting. I wonder what that was about. Probably redressing their grievances. Boy, do they have a lot. That's why we are where we are. That's why we had a civil war. That's why these idiots are angling for one again. And I want to tell you, this is the day when General Lee, yeah, that traitor, surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. U.S. Grant. There was a rock star named that. Anyway, today's a grand day, and I was wondering, do states in the South, or those who are Southern sympathizers, do they have a white sheet sale on today? I wonder. I bet they'd have a white sheet sale every day. It's the hoods that I'm also worried about, and those are coming back in a pointed way. And I don't mean that as a pun. No, I don't. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here on this fabulous Friday? It's the end of the week. And even though the news be so as it is, it's not anything like it was for the last 4 years. And so we have that to, count on. And that's nice. It is. Well, on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Marsha Blackburn, yeah, that one. Marsha Blackburn says, taking care of our elders is a waste of taxpayer money. Well, you should talk, babe. GOP congressmen accuse the airlines of progressive fascism, and I have no idea what that is. Is it like, gradual fascism? What's progressive fascism? Slow fascism? We know what they mean. Liberal fascism, and it has no meaning in any political science class anywhere. Well, they have accused the airlines of progressive fascism for training pilots who are not white men. They're just coming right out and saying it. Okay. And Texas has no penalty if you are caught with a ghost gun, but they'll charge you with a felony if you help someone get an absentee ballot. Wow. I like that. All hat, no democracy. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi drew condemnation from Turkish strongman Edorgan after saying it is important to be frank with dictators. Well, way to go, Mario. And Russia has marshaled more troops on Ukraine's eastern border than at any time since they annexed the Crimea in 2014. Putin wants to rattle his sabers before Kim Jong-un, who traditionally is the person who does that at this point in a new administration. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. here, the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Off to the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link across the page that is near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you would help this little powerhouse of resistance continue resisting as we have for the last 10 years. Happy birthday to us. It is our 10th anniversary this year, and it started, at the end of February or so. And we've been broadcasting 24/7, 365 and all that time because, well, we consider it our civic duty. And you have really helped us fulfill that duty. And how did you? Well, folks have taken what they could afford, like what they would spend on an espresso-type coffee drink. I'll get it out. It's Friday. And when they take those funds that they would have spent on an espresso-type coffee drink and sent it our way, we are alchemists when it comes to stretching dollars. We are quantum mechanics. That's right. And even that new muon that they discovered is a part of our ability to stretch these dollars beyond compare. We put them in with what we pull out of our own wallets, by the way. And therefore, we are able to pay our bills. We fly under the radar, continue resisting as the founders originally intended so many years ago. And I'm talking before Brown v. Board of Education, when the idea of original intent first raised its ugly head. No, we're talking way back. And we've been able to fulfill that original intent, our civic duty, as originally intended, because of your generosity, all kidding aside. So thank you for that, and thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, so you could go there directly to get the show notes and links. But I post it also on Twitter and other social media platforms. You know who they are. So you could go to @Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diaries there about 10 minutes before showtime. And do check out those show notes and links. It is an integral part of this whole, multimedia operation. Yes, indeed. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Our snoozing sous chef has worked so hard this week, he's working even harder today. Can you tell? Yeah, he's back there. And I just let him do it because we love him, and that's his way. Let him be. Alrighty. I am going to take us into this first offering that we have here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It is out of The American Independent by Donna Provencher. Senator Marsha Blackburn, a repug from Tennessee, criticized President Joe Biden's $2 trillion jobs and infrastructure proposal, the American Jobs Plan, specifically because it includes funding for caretaking of the elderly, which I got to tell you, a lot of us are becoming, if we aren't already. President Biden's proposal is about anything but infrastructure, she tweeted, alongside an image superimposed with large text reading, $400 billion towards elder care. Wow. If I saw that, I would think that was a good thing. But then again, we're not repugs, are we? Biden's plan proposes to allot approximately $400 billion dispersed over an 8-year time period toward care for the elderly and those with disabilities. Sort of like a New Deal. Let's make people go to work. Make them? No, let's provide jobs and opportunities. That's all part of infrastructure. Isn't the idea of infrastructure anyway to get people to repair bridges? To get people to repair roads? Or how about to lay electric lines in the Tennessee Valley? How about that? Studies have repeatedly found that economic toll home-based caregiving has on caretakers can be steep, forcing them to tap into savings and retirement funds for out-of-pocket expenses. Now, the funding from the bill is specifically intended to bolster home or community-based care for those groups and would extend Money Follows the Person, a Medicaid program which aims to move elderly nursing home residents back into home-based care. Little bit of history. My sister and I, when we were quite young still, decided we would never send our parents to a nursing home, as it was called back in the day. Or maybe we called it a convalescent home. They're not going to a convalescent home, which was a nice way of calling it an old folks home. That was the other one. Because we had visited, we had volunteered, and we had worked in those establishments, and we decided we never wanted our parents to go there. Now, I will say my dad is in a assisted care home, and he's quite happy. He has his own apartment, and it is, it's rather spacious, I have to admit, and as it should be, and he's quite comfortable, quite independent, but he's cared for. And my sister's nearby also. I care for my elderly mother in this house. We do not want to send them there. We'll do hospice here. Thank you very much. And all Joe is doing is laying the roads for that. Okay? We are trapped in a caregiving crisis with an economic crisis within a health care crisis, Biden said on the campaign trail. You're doing everything you can, but the president is not, he added, referring to Trump. Biden has made it a priority of his administration to expand what he calls the caregiving economy. Blackburn already had a questionable record on protecting vulnerable Americans in need before her comments on Wednesday. She has long sought to overturn the Affordable Care Act and has repeatedly voted to strip health care protections for Americans with pre-existing conditions. And while still in the House of Representatives, she voted for 2018's controversial Farm Bill, which imposed rigid work requirements on close to 7 million food stamp recipients and limited eligibility for nutritional assistance programs for families in need. And you know what the trickle-down effect of that was? Yeah, farmers couldn't sell their food. She has also voted no on expanding children's health care insurance program and on legislation providing 4 weeks of paid parental leave for federal employees. Before we begin this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, I just realized I failed to pay proper respects to the passing of Prince Philip, who passed away today at the age of 99. And in respectful condolences, let me just say that he was a majestic old racist, and he was a fairly majestic young racist, too, back in the day. And now he's dead. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. All right. This next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Josh Israel out of the American Independent. Representative Thomas Massey, Republic of Kentucky, unleashed a racist and sexist attack on United Airlines yesterday, Thursday, demanding to know which pilots received training as part of the company's new effort to diversify its workforce. Airlines should advertise the exact flights flown by pilots who are chosen as part of their new diversity programs, rather than the outdated programs based solely on skill, experience, and qualifications, Massey tweeted. He thinks affirmative action means that unqualified people of color will be flying the planes. Don't worry about it. It's the mechanics that you should be worrying about, idiot. Massey was apparently upset about an announcement by United on Tuesday of its plan to launch a pilot training program. Our flight deck should reflect the diverse group of people on board our planes every day. And that's why we plan for 50% of the 5,000 pilots we train in the next decade to be women or people of color. Out the side of your window, off to the right, I'll dip these wings a bit, you'll see the Grand Canyon. United made clear that it was not lowering its standards for the sake of diversity, tweeting, "All the highly qualified candidates we accept into the academy, regardless of race or sex, will have met or exceeded the standards we set for admittance. And if you look off to the right, there's the Pacific Ocean." Others on the right are also outraged that the airline is seeking to diversify its cadre of pilots. Representative Dan Crenshaw, one-eyed repug from Texas, accused United of progressive fascism. There it is. What is that? Is that gradual fascism? I don't know, Dan. Well, of course, he was on Fox News to float that line, launching into an extended complaint about the company's reaction to voter suppression legislation that's been enacted in Georgia, and saying, if they want to hire based on quotas and virtual signal to us and imply that people didn't have these opportunities to begin with, fine, but don't lie about other policy. Really, Dan? Crenshaw, who accused United of meddling in issues it knows nothing about, did accept about $4,000 from its corporate PAC for his 2020 re-election race. And, of course, Fox host Tucker Carlson said in an opinion column published by Fox News, if hiring on the basis of irrelevant criteria will over time get people killed, why are they demanding it? Because they don't care. They're ideologues. They're suffering from an incurable brain disease called wokeness. Reality means nothing to them. It's merely an impediment to their plans. The aviation industry in the U.S. does not come close to reflecting the nation's diversity. United said this week that just 7% of its pilots are women, and 13% are people of color. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 94% of professional pilots in the United States are white, and just 5.6% are women. The American Independent brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Republicans on the Texas House Elections Committee advanced House Bill 6 relating to election integrity and preservation of the purity of the ballot box through the prevention of fraud in the conduct of an election yesterday, Thursday, over the vocal objections of major companies, voting rights advocates, and Democratic lawmakers who say the measure needlessly makes it harder to vote. HB 6 would make it a felony to send eligible voters absentee ballot applications if they do not request them. It also gives more rights to partisan poll watchers like the ones in Detroit who tried to push their way into a vote tally room during the counting of ballots in 2020. And it wasn't just one room, it was rooms. Voting rights advocates worry that if the bill becomes law, GOP poll watchers could try to intimidate voters in communities of color. Former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro called the poll watcher provisions vigilante voter suppression. Major companies in the state also spoke out about HB 6 before it advanced through the committee. A sign corporate objections are falling on deaf ears. Microsoft, which has 1,500 employees in Texas, said in a statement that the company is concerned that HB 6 would prevent local election officials from proactively providing absentee ballot applications and ballot materials to all Texas voters. Michael Dell, the CEO of Austin-based corporation that bears his name, tweeted, "Free, fair, equitable access to voting is the foundation of American democracy. Those rights, especially for women and communities of color, have been hard-earned. Governments should ensure citizens have their votes heard. HB 6 does the opposite, and we are opposed to it." Now, HB 6 is only one of several voter suppression bills making it through the Texas legislature. The Republican-controlled Senate also passed SB 7 in the wee hours of April 2nd. That bill would require the disabled to provide proof of their disability in order to vote by mail, limit early voting, and eliminate drive-through voting, a method more than 100,000 people used in the 2020 election. Now, Democrats in the U.S. Congress are seeking to pass H.R. 1, a pro-democracy government reform bill that would expand access to the ballot by requiring early voting periods, making no-excuse absentee voting universal, and limiting the use of voter ID laws. A Brennan Center for Justice analysis found that H.R. 1 would block almost every single voter suppression bill Republicans have introduced. Well, let's hope we can get Joe Manchin to agree to it, huh? We don't want to make the Republicans mad at us and have them storm the Capitol again, huh? All right, enough of that. Let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Dressed to Kill, literally. Horror satire is not a new genre. However, horror is satire sending up capitalism from the aspect of economic and environmental justice is pretty fresh, and for this reason, the new Canadian horror film Slacks deserves a look. Set in a non-pandemic 2020, Slacks follows a day in the working life of Libby, a new retail hire who's thrilled to have landed a position at the uber-hip chain store CCC. Unlike other stores, it's suggested that at CCC, people can shop their way to saving the earth and look cool doing it. Libby's first day just happens to be the day before the launch of an ultra-cool line of jeans, which will not only make anyone look fabulous, but are also grown from fair trade organic cotton and sewn under humane conditions. If it sounds too good to be true, we soon learn that it is. Straight out of real life, it seems that CCC contracts both the factories and the fields from where the products and materials originate, and doesn't actually know how the workers are treated. But hey, it makes for good advertising, as evidenced by the excitement over a scheduled appearance of a social media influencer whose approval could lead to huge profits for the chain. However, unbeknownst to all, one pair of the new jeans on the store's shelves is possessed by the angry spirit of a contractor who died under gruesome circumstances and is bent on revenge. Director Elza Kephart revels in the low-budget look that have made slacker retail films hits in the past, but unlike those, the issues raised in Slacks leave you to wonder who's really making and paying the price for your discount clothes. It's a haunting question that has nothing to do with the supernatural. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Boston and New York are famed for their rivalries. Everything from the Yankees versus the Red Sox to who makes the correct clam chowder. It seems even the local wildlife has hometown pride, because pigeons that roost near Rockefeller Center are genetically distinct from those that summer at the Cape. The finding is in the journal Evolutionary Applications.
I don't think we could be in a city without thinking about pigeons. And for many people, it's one of the few daily interactions that they have with wildlife.
Elizabeth Carlin, a graduate student at Fordham University in the Bronx. As an evolutionary biologist, Carlin was curious about whether pigeons in one city are closely related, genetically speaking, to those from cities nearby. So she did a research-inspired road trip, making stops from Boston to D.C.
I would drive to a city and then start talking to people at Starbucks, anybody that I could chat with. I would start asking them questions about where they saw pigeons and kind of start to gather intel that way.
Once she'd found a flock, she'd lay down some birdseed.
And then use a net gun, which is basically something that looks like a big flashlight. And it shoots a net out over the pigeons.
With birds literally in hand, she would take a DNA sample.
I like to call it like a pigeon 23andMe, right? We're looking for ancestry and proportion of shared ancestry. And so we can build this big map with all these individuals that kind of tells us who's more closely related to who.
Carlin was surprised to find that pigeons in the Northeast can be divided into two distinct populations.
One population is in Boston and Providence, and then the other population ranges from New York down to Washington, D.C. I had actually, based on previous research, thought that pigeons in each city would form their own separate populations, because if you have food and you have mates, why would you go anywhere? Why would you disperse? And what I'm starting to realize is that pigeons actually kind of view this northeastern megacity as one giant city, at least from Boston down to Washington, D.C.
And it wouldn't take much to promote avian intermixing within this megacity.
One pigeon will leave New York and go down to Philly, and then maybe a pigeon from Baltimore will come up to Philly, and that's allowing there to be gene flow between all these different cities.
Maybe the feathered foragers are simply following the food. Just think of all the French fries left behind at rest stops along I-95.
If humans are traveling this corridor quite a bit, it makes sense that pigeons also are traveling it.
As to why pigeons don't bother making the trip between Boston and New York, Carlin points to the more manicured lawns of Connecticut.
Connecticut is a lot more suburban than these other areas, and that might be why pigeons in Providence and Boston are kind of falling out as separate from pigeons in more southern cities.
Next up, Carlin says she'd like to further explore the relationships that exist within flocks.
Are they aunts and uncles and cousins and parents and grandparents? Or are they just a random group of individuals that happen to come together?
Hopefully, not in the middle of the road. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Sweetie, want some fruit? You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, Show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
On Election Day 2016, when Crystal Mason of Fort Worth, Texas, age 46 and mother of 3, went to her local polling place, her name wasn't on the voting roll, so at the urging of poll workers, she used what's called a provisional ballot, which was never counted, and for which, get this, she was prosecuted and sentenced to jail for 5 years.
I'm Baratunde Thurston from The Onion, and also, mother. You're listening to the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The reason that Miss Crystal's name was not on the voting roll was that she had served time for a federal offense and was still on what's called supervised release, and Texas law says you can't vote unless you've completed every aspect of a sentence. The prosecutors insisted that Miss Crystal should have known this because when she was in jail in 2012, the county sent a letter to her home with this information, the one place, as her lawyer put it, they knew she would not be. There's so much wrong here. Why should the 5 million people in the United States, including Miss Crystal, with prior criminal offenses be disqualified from voting at all? Why should people who make a good faith error and cast a ballot that might not be and wasn't counted be prosecuted? And how in life can these facts justify 5 years in jail? And what do we make of the fact that 3/4 of the tiny number of people per year prosecuted for voter fraud in Texas, like Miss Crystal, are people of color?
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1865. That was the day Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox, Virginia. Grant's Union Army successfully cut off Confederate forces at the village of Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. Historians agree the terms were generous to the Confederacy. The surrender marked the beginning of the end of the Civil War, with 3 more key surrenders before the end of May. Half the country was in ruins, with as many as 750,000 dead. In the North alone, millions more lay seriously injured. At least 40,000 formerly enslaved blacks died fighting for their freedom. It was considered the country's turning point. The Civil War ended the slave system, forged a centralized federal government, and created a national structure for the institutional development of public health, veteran care, and aid programs. The era of Reconstruction ushered in a period of hope and opportunity for black freedom, equality, and prosperity. But historian Gregory Downs argues in his book After Appomattox, Military Occupation and the Ends of the War, that the war did not really end in 1865. The South was essentially under military occupation until at least 1871. Downs writes, quote, "By severing the war's conflict from the Reconstruction that followed, it drained meaning from the Civil War and turned it into a family feud, a fight that ended with regional reconciliation. Once white Southern Democrats overthrew Reconstruction, they utilized the Appomattox myth to erase the connection between the popular, neatly concluded Civil War and the continuing battles of Reconstruction." For Eric Foner, the period was one of revolution and counter-revolution, a massive experiment in interracial democracy without precedent. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees Fahrenheit, still under an active freeze watch and for another few hours apparently, though we will be a bit warmer than yesterday, in which we actually got up to about 72 degrees ever so briefly, and expecting to be maybe a tad warmer than that, but I doubt it. Maybe the same. Sunny conditions should prevail throughout the day with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Cleared up partly cloudy overnight with lows around the mid-30s, and winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow with highs expected only in the mid-50s. Oh my. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stand at 9,546. That is a marked increase from yesterday, in which even yesterday was the updated totals from the last weekend. I can confirm, well, anecdotally, is that confirmation? A few doors down, or a few houses down the hill from us. Is that good or bad? Oh my God. The whole family has COVID. 5 people. They work at Home Depot. I guess I'm not going to Home Depot. Well, I wouldn't go there anyway. We go to Lowe's because at least Lowe's, for now, aren't crazy asses like the guy at Home Depot. We don't like Home Depot, but you know, moms, they don't know that stuff until you tell them, and then they go, well, whatever they do. But with that knowledge, it's maybe we don't want to show up at Home Depot. If a whole family gets it, that's not good. Anyway, other weather to report is that grass pollen is now rated as low instead of none. Outside the window here in Rogue River proper, the air quality index is good at 26 parts per million. I hope it's enough to dilute the COVID germs emanating from the house down the hill. And the daytime UV index is high, so maybe it'll just burn it right out of the air. Let's hope. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.23 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 99%. Yikes. Well, the roofs that are well insulated were crusty with frost this morning. So not too much higher. There is a cold air mass. So who knows? I don't know if wind machine is going to be enough for the fruit trees, unfortunately. We don't want to see too many of these freezes. It drops everything, forces them, as they say. Anyway, weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. And that's called the Weather Underground, just so you know. London is 57 and partly cloudy. Paris is 62 and sunny. Springtime in Paris. Rome is 60 degrees and sunny. Now, I got to say the Spanish Steps in Rome are quite nice in the springtime as well. Kyiv is 49 and fair. Kabul is 58 and fair. Hong Kong is 67 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 50 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 46 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New York, New York is 54 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowdsources from around the world. Reuters staff at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi on Thursday yesterday accused Turkish President Edorgan of humiliating European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen this week, and it was reported here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, by the way, and said it is important to be frank with dictators, drawing condemnation from Ankara. Von der Leyen and European Council President Charles Michel met Edorgan in Ankara on Tuesday. The Commission chief was clearly taken aback when the two men sat on the only two chairs prepared, relegating her to an adjacent sofa. An out-of-camera frame as well, by the way. I absolutely do not agree with Erdogan's behavior towards President von der Leyen. I think it was not appropriate behavior, and I was very sorry for the humiliation von der Leyen had to suffer, Draghi told reporters. With these, let's call them what they are, dictators, with whom one nonetheless has to coordinate. One has to be frank when expressing different visions and opinions, he added. The Italian ambassador to Ankara was summoned to the foreign ministry over Draghi's comments. Turkish state-owned Anadolu news agency reported, and Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu slammed the remarks. Well, I just butchered his name, didn't I? I did. We strongly condemn the appointed Italian Prime Minister Draghi's unacceptable populist discourse and his ugly and unrestrained comments about our elected president. Yeah, well, he's a dictator. Earlier on Thursday, Cavusoglu said that the seating at the meeting was arranged in line with the bloc's demands and international protocol, and that Turkey was being subject to unjust accusations.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more Reuters staff at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Russia has more troops on Ukraine's eastern border than at any time since 2014, when it annexed Crimea and backed separatist territory seizures, and the United States is concerned by growing Russian aggressions, the White House said yesterday, Thursday. The United States is discussing its concerns with its NATO allies, Press Secretary Jen Psaki told a briefing. The Russian buildup has become the latest point of friction in icy relations between Moscow and U.S. President Joe Biden's administration, adding to disputes over arms control, human rights, and other issues. Biden last week expressed unwavering support for the Ukraine in his confrontation with Russia, which in 2014 annexed the Crimea Peninsula and backed separatists to seize large parts of the eastern Donbass region. Russia has said its troops are no threat and are just defensive. All those little green men you see, don't worry about them. They're friendly. Emergency. Everyone to get from street. Psaki said the United States is increasingly concerned by recent escalating Russian aggressions in eastern Ukraine, including Russian troop movements on Ukraine's border. Psaki did not elaborate on the number of Russian troops deployed on Ukraine's border, but it was the first time that the Biden administration has given a description of the scale of the buildup. We'll keep an eye on those developments as they develop. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday right here for, well, River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. the tea.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.